Hello, I am Nietzsche. And I am Socrates. And this is a lecture about someone we never met. Well, I never met him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just yeah. These are my two finger puppets. There's the Unemployed Philosophers Guild, and they make finger puppets. So this is Socrates, hello, and this is Nietzsche, go to hell. Sorry, he's a little temperamental. Anyway, this is how philosophers have fun with cheap toys and their own imagination. So anyway, that's enough of that. So now we're going to talk about chapter 7 of James's book Pragmatism, which is entitled Pragmatism as Humanism. And it picks up several themes which were present in chapter 2, the theme of truth, the theme of reality, and this question of temperament, which James says is often operative in pragmatic, rationalistic, empiricistic, and lots of other kinds of philosophical views. So James is going to advance what he's calling pragmatism, but which Schiller calls humanism, and he's going to look at this question, first of all, as to what it means to say that something is the truth. And think about this from your own life perspective for a minute. Consider your reaction when someone says, I want to prepare you for something, get ready, you're going to need to sit down for this. And they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to lay out the truth on you. Well, how do you typically prepare yourself for that? Are you full of anxious and happy speculation, anticipation of that? Do you brace yourself for maybe a contradiction of what you already believe or things that you hold dear? Are you a bit resistant? Maybe a lot resistant? Well, a lot of times when someone comes with the truth, they pronounce it in a kind of oracular voice, in a sort of big, this is important, this is ultimate kind of voice. And typically we resist this. Right? We expect that whatever single truth we're about to hear, whatever alternatives we think of are going to be wrong. And so James in this lecture begins by saying, where does this motivation for the in the truth come from? As in the truth, the law, the right way of doing things. James wants to know, where does the singularity come from? Where does the finality come from? What are the practical effects of this kind of truth? And what other ways of seeing truth might there be? And what are the practical consequences of that? Right? It's always about tracing the practical consequences. So we know that for James, truths are plural, truths are becoming. They arise in individual experiences and they're later abstracted, right? We abstract from our experiences and that's what becomes the truth. So truth for James is constantly being grafted onto by new experience, by facts. So he says previous truth meets up with fresh fact, and from that we have an altered truth, a new truth. It might be new truth star, if you will, right? So, and in this way of seeing things, truths are made, right? The truth, the law, what we call language, these are all things which are being made and they're being remade in experience. They're not pre existent things. We live in particular experiences and then we abstract from those particular experiences and we call those things by general terms. Now, humanism is Schiller's term for this truth making operation. And so here's James from the text. He says, laws and languages, at any rate, are thus seen to be man made things. Mr. Schiller applies the analogy to beliefs and proposes the name of humanism for the doctrine that, to an unascertainable extent, our truths are man made products too. Human motives sharpen all of our questions. Human satisfactions lurk in all of our answers. All of our formulas have a human twist. Is there a world radically apart from us in this vision? No. Is there a world that resists us? Oh, yeah. The world definitely resists us, right? You know, it resists us. But it's plastic, right, the world yields to us as well. So the question then becomes, well, how plastic is the world? And James says this is something that we are constantly testing, constantly having to test. So James goes on here and talks about three different aspects of what we call reality. So he's giving us a breakdown of this very fundamental metaphysical term. The first part of reality is that reality acts resistantly. Some of this is involuntary, right? We have sensations. A loud lawnmower is going on next door, and it just seems like it's forced upon us, right? I wouldn't will that into existence, and I can't make it go away, right? But some of this aspect, this first part of reality, is voluntary, right? We have some control, right? Am I going to fixate on the sound of the lawnmower, or am I going to let it go, right? How am I going to describe it? Description is another voluntary control we exercise on reality. Am I going to say it's another damn lawnmower, or am I going to say, oh, it's the neighbors keeping the block nice, right? So this realm of description, this realm of selection and attention, this is the realm of the true and false. So that's the first part of reality. The second part of reality is what James says is the relations between our sensations, the above, the behind, the earlier, the later, and so forth. These relations are just as real as the things related, he says. The third part of reality is the most determinative aspect of all three parts, and it's made up by what we bring initially to the situation, our perspective, our funded experience, if you will. So this is James in the text. He says, what we say about reality thus depends on the perspective into which we throw it. The that of it is its own, but the what depends on the which, and the which depends on us. I'll say that again. The that of reality, the that of it is its own, but the what depends on the which, and the which depends on us. Both the sensational and the relational parts of reality are dumb. They say absolutely nothing about themselves. It is we who have to speak for them. So consider how funded experience or expectations makes a bell sound like a bell, right? You're sitting there reading and all of a sudden you have this sensation. You make a bell sound because that's what you bring to it, right? These are our previous truths about reality. They are especially malleable. They are especially changeable. But of course, they're not willy-nilly changeable, not on a whim, right? You have those other conditions that of not disturbing previous beliefs. Now you might be thinking, let's see, an experience comes in and I have to do something with it, and only then does it make sense. It sounds like Kant. Well, James says this is not Kant. It sounds like Kant's categories shaping primeval experience, but it's not. James sees us as shaping reality, but the categories with which we shape things are changeable, right? And they're key to our goals and our uses as individuals. This even extends for James to mathematics and logic, right? These are things which are changeable as well. They are takings from experience that depend on our uses, our goals, our ways of framing things. And then in the next encounter with something new, we are taking it differently, and it is coming to us differently as well. So, in sum, what a humanist considers to be a thing or a number or a logical function or whatever depends on how and why we want to take it in that particular way, in which way we take it. So the humanistic principle, as James enunciates it, is you cannot weed out the human contribution. And he says here, we plunge forward into the field of fresh experience with the beliefs of our ancestors, and we have made them already. These determine what we notice, and what we notice determines what we do. And what we do, again, determines what we experience. Right? So you see that recursive dynamic there. And quoting again, so from one thing to another, although the stubborn fact remains that there is a sensible flux, what is true of it seems from first to last to be largely a matter of our own creation. End quote. Another way to put this, different words, my own words, is that we're historied beings, and we make the future as it makes us. So for this humanist account of reality, there's no longer a dualism, there's no longer a categorical separation between a thought and a thing, or between language and reality. As James quotes the philosopher Lotze, he says, Lotze has in several places made a deep suggestion. We naively assume, he says, a relation between reality and our minds, which may be just the opposite of the true one. Reality, we naturally think, stands ready-made and complete, and our intellects supervene with the one simple duty of describing it as it is already. But may not our descriptions, Lotze says, be themselves important additions to reality? So you see here a vision of reality that includes both sensations, right, physical objects and events, and the language with which we describe it, all of the same fabric. It's all in the stream of experience, to put it in Jamesian terms. So on this view, the idea that language is somehow apart or ontologically other than what it describes is destroyed. Reality is in the making, and part of the way that reality makes itself is with language. Right? So language is reality's way of making itself. That sounds a little too Hegelian, but I think you get the point.